Hello everyone, I am Belinda Cheeseborough, STEM Education Specialist here at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. I'm here to share the stories of African Americans and the impacts they've had and continue to have on American culture because of their STEM contributions. Through the Window and Into the Mirror is a career conversation series about the experiences of African American STEM professionals today. During this session, students will peer into the windows of their speakers' lives and learn from their lived experiences. They will also find parts of their culture and lifestyle mirrored in their stories. To everyone listening, it is our hope that you leave here with information, inspiration, and plans for action as you take your first steps towards having a career in STEM. Now, let's meet our speaker. Here I am sitting with the wonderful, the amazing CEO and founder of Dope Nerds, Ursula Spencer.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Thank you for being here. We're so happy to have you here at the museum. And as you can see here, we are filming inside of the museum in our Robert F. Smith Family History Center. So first question for Ursula. Please briefly tell us about your work, what you do, and anything else you think is important for us to know.
So I am the founder of Dope Nerds, and I do play the role, or have the role of CEO of the organization. Dope Nerds, we are delivering the future in learning for education and training. Soft skills, trade skills. So if you want to be in construction, you are then fully immersed into an environment where you learn about protecting yourself on site, about how to handle hazardous environments, or advanced manufacturing where you're dealing with, really, huge machinery for production lines and things of that nature. And these are all fully immersed learning experiences with true to life scenarios. And then we have the soft skills side where you can learn everything from job readiness, so how to interview and how to have a successful interview, right? And as well as things like conflict resolution, leadership, DEI, things of that nature.
You cover a wide spectrum of things.
Yes.
That is so cool. So we have to start from your childhood because we're trying to get a picture of your story. So did you have an interest in STEM while growing up? And if you did, what positive STEM experiences led you to, did you have that inspired you to pursue a career in STEM?
So here's what's interesting. Growing up, in my youth, I didn't really, there weren't examples of STEM, and it wasn't, not to age myself, but I'm a woman of a certain age. But in growing up in the 70s and the 80s, there were not these, like outward or prolific images of us in STEM or just STEM in general, and it wasn't even called STEM. You had a job in tech, and it was just that kind of straightforward. Also during that time in the educational space or in the academic space, elementary all the way through high school, well, I want to say elementary and middle school, we really didn't have career exploration in STEM field, maybe in the medical field or in healthcare, but outside of that, not focused on technology or in engineering. Science, yes, right? Yeah. Because that's just the standard, right, study. So I didn't have your sort of ideal, let's say, or even maybe your standard pathway into STEM. It really came from taking things apart in the house. And I always tell this story because it's actually pretty funny. We had a series of gaming consoles. So if you're a gamer, which we talked about, right? We love this, we love the gaming conversation. And we had Atari, yes,
oh, wow.
With the old school cartridge, right? Where you had to blow into the cartridge if it got dusty.
To make it work.
Yes. So we had Atari, we had Sega, and I was really fascinated with how things worked, the components of those objects. So I was taking them apart, but I was also putting them back together. So I would literally get a small screwdriver, take apart the gaming console, look inside, like see how cool. And it was at first I was sneaking and doing it. But then my mom saw me taking apart the Sega one day. And she's like, yeah, so we can't be like having you take apart the gaming consoles. And she purchased, to sort of rechannel that energy, my parents purchased a Commodore VIC-20.
Whoa.
Yes, that far back.
Oh my God.
And
how big was it?
Correct. I mean, half of a desk, right? Like, I mean, the machine, the monitor itself had, and then it had the back, right?
Yeah.
It had the back of the monitor, right? So the back of it was huge. It was just a massive size. But then like the screen, I don't know, equivalent today might have been like 10 inches. It's like
a tablet size.
right, with just like this huge structure around it. And then the keyboards were big. Everything was just big back then, right? Including the televisions. And although the computer was for the family, I just happened to take to it. And that is when I taught myself how to hack at 11 years old. And by that time, fashion was my first love. So I was already drawing and really honing in on the creative side of my brain, just doing all things artistic and painting and things of that nature. But then when we got the computer, it became
your obsession.
Yes, it became an obsession, and it really just was in line with the creative side. And then I started becoming more techie, so to speak.
That's so cool. I feel like I had a similar experience when I was a child. I love taking things apart too. I feel like any person who loves STEM ends up like wanting to know how things work.
Being inquisitive, yeah.
Yeah, so that's really cool. I can't imagine like taking apart the Commodore and like seeing the parts that are in there. Or were some of them even safe for you to touch?
Probably, likely not, especially back then, right?
Yeah.
Like how things are built, we're smarter, right? And how we build technology. So I'm pretty sure there were components there I wasn't even supposed to be opening, let alone touching. So, but to your point, that's where the inquisitiveness came into play. And I want to say that certainly is where my journey started in STEM.
That's beautiful. So you mentioned your mom in telling this story. So would you say that she was one of your biggest role models while you were growing up?
I'm going to say both my parents, my mom, at the time, so it's really interesting. Generations are just really interesting, right? And that is our parents, you find a job, you get that job, you stay in that job, right? And you retire from that job. So for that time, my parents, the inspiration really came from the hard work and being in the resilience and the fortitude. I really feel as though I've acquired those, characteristics from them. My mom, she started what we now consider a career, right? At the time, considered a job, right? And she started her career at age 18. Wow. At the New York Board of Education, to which she's still there.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And now she's exploring retirement. However, but just to kind of give you an idea, and over the course of her career and journey, she's excelled, and she got her, she's the first of the immediate family to get a degree, and she got it at 50.
Wow.
Yeah, so that type, she's forever inspirational, right? And then my dad, who's since transitioned, he was a truck driver. So and he also, I'm an Army brat, or we're Army brats. So he was in the service before he then retired his career in the service and went into truck driving. So just hardworking, a hardworking family, and I feel like those characteristics became the inspiration and the foundation, if you would, for my work ethic today.
I love that. Just fully instilled in you. And you had seen a very dynamic childhood, it seems like.
Yes, yes. So where my mom was the more strict around education. Give you an example, in our Brooklyn apartment, we had 2 libraries. And by today's standard, they would be like IKEA, like libraries, right? So we had 2 libraries, and those libraries were filled with everything from African American history to, science and at that time, I don't even know, I feel so old. Are encyclopedias even still used today?
Yeah, I mean,
sort of, kind of.
Basically an encyclopedia, right? So.
Well, it's a little different, but we had all of these encyclopedias, and we were required. My siblings are going to crack up about this. During the summer, when technically you're supposed to be off from school and just enjoying your summer, we had to do book reports, specifically around African American history, because especially at that time, and I realized that there are some challenges with this in current times, African American history was not taught in schools, not in the profound way that it needed to be told. So our stories weren't told. So my parents kind of took the reign on that. And so during the summer, or any time that we had off, we had to do a book report, but then here's the creative part that comes into play. We then had to find a creative way to tell that story.
Oh.
So we had family talent show.
Did someone do an interpretive dance?
Yes. Okay. So we were deemed the broke Jackson 5. I had a super dry Jerry curl, just to give you an example. So to your point, yes, my older sister was the dancer. The second oldest, what did Tony do? She probably danced too. The third, I'm the middle child, so I, kind of did spoken word, if you would. Okay. And that's more the second oldest too. So more like acting it out in a creative way. And then two of my younger siblings, one is a singer and the other play the guitar. So literally like a full-on family talent show around African American history. Yeah.
Did you start inviting the neighbors over?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's the first time I've ever heard that story.
But that's a beautiful story though, because it feels like not only like you were having your normal education like every other American student at that time, but your family took the effort to give you this extracurricular part.
Absolutely.
To really instill the history, our history,
yes.
into you, so you would know where you came from.
Yes.
And that's beautiful.
Yes.
And also in a creative way, a talent show.
It was yes, only us, right?
Only I love that so much. That's so beautiful. But yeah, so now actually that leads into my next question about your hobbies and interests. You mentioned fashion, and clearly you have talent for spoken word as well. Is there any other interests or hobbies that you have while growing up that were not STEM related per se?
Yeah, I was a serious tomboy, which no one would ever guessed, given the fashion side, right? But I was a serious tomboy, so I love, roughing and toughing it on the sports side. Although I wasn't an athlete, which was interesting. I don't know. Well, now cheerleading is considered
it's an athletic sport.
Whereas it wasn't considered that back then. So I was into cheerleading, but also playing sports around the neighborhood. And fashion, drawing was really a creative outlet. Mm-hmm. But then once we got the computer, I went full in, right? I became really, really obsessed. And interestingly enough, we got the computer, I was age 11, so through middle school. By the time high school came, that was the other thing too. My parents, even though they saw that we all had these different creative talents, right? One thing, the foundation or what was mandatory is we had to have a skill. So my mom made all of us take typing. So by the time all of us graduated high school at our respective ages, we were all typing over 100 words a minute.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I did not type that fast.
Including my brother, right? Because and growing up, of course, it was, if you're a girl, you type. If you're a boy, right? Yeah. Very gender lined.
Which is weird, right? Because we all need typing skills nowadays.
it's required,
Yeah,
right?
it's required.
It's required. So there's the sort of the forward thinking that my parents had around, yes, having these talents are great, but what can you lock in from a skills perspective and always have a job, always have a career, always have a gig. So when I arrived at high school, I had already honed in on my computer skills and then already typing over 100 words a minute. Wow. So during high school, I was able to get a career, working, not a career, a job, a summer job, working at like a law firm or doing shorthand for an attorney because those skills have been honed at home.
That's so cool. So now that we're into the high school part of your story, were you part of any like high school clubs or?
Oh my gosh. So I hate to say this on camera, but I did not like high school.
No.
I don't know. I was not a huge fan, although I had excelled academically throughout, school, from elementary, getting to high school. I don't know. I was ready to take on the world. I was ready to travel. I was ready to, and at the time, we don't know it to be a career. We know that word now, right?
Yeah.
But growing up, it was, for all intents and purposes, I was ready to have a job and I was ready to travel. So for me, high school was like, okay, I have the skills, like, I'm ready to get this over with.
You're bored. You're like,
Yes, I'm ready. Like, I'm not necessarily ready. I wasn't forcing or rushing being an adult as much as I just was ready for experience and what it was like, and especially growing up in New York, and then I was going to school in New York City or Manhattan. So I was going to school in the city. So you're all around Wall Street and right.
Yeah, the hustle and bustle.
Yes. So seeing that and seeing people, hustle and bustle about, I was really inspired by that. However, in high school, it wasn't like all horrible. That is where I really became active in cheerleading, so much so that I actually had a couple of nicknames. One was She-Ra. So if anyone, here's the geek moment, right? He-Man and She-Ra and the Masters of the Universe, and Saturday morning cartoons. But my nickname was She-Ra, and that was because anytime we did sort of those pyramids, I was always the one like holding up multiple fellow cheerleaders. So that was an interesting time, and that became an outlet as well, right? Cheerleading at different games, and it was for basketball.
Okay.
So getting a little bit of travel and getting off your block, so to speak, and being able to just explore, what else was out there. But that was. Those were that part of it. Yeah, that was the highlight. That was the highlight.
Okay, so now moving on to college. Where did you go for college, or do you have like a story that kind of leads you to going to college? Like, did you go to college right away, or?
Here is what's interesting. I am a self-taught technologist, and I'm not matriculated.
Oh, okay.
So I did not, even when I thought to explore the college or university route, I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And not that I would suggest that to everyone. Everyone's journey is their own. For me, you saw how like I was itching to get out of high school, right, and graduate from high school, which I did complete and graduate. But by that time, if you think about age range that most students enter college, I had already launched my career right out of high school.
Wow.
So right out of high school, I had my first job in IT, and people wouldn't think that, and it wasn't sexy at all, data entry, but an important skill to have, and how was I able to land that right out of high school? Because I had honed the typing at home, the learning on the computer, on the Commodore, VIC-20 at home, right? But then in high school, like really perfecting and advancing in those skill sets. And so, at that time I knew, all right, I'm in a career now. Like, it's not just a job. Like, I'm about to enter into the technology industry. I was right hit the ground running right out of high school with that.
Wow, I would be so scared, but you clearly were fearless. You're just like, I just want to do things.
Yes, I really was, and I would always suggest to find that part of yourself with any aspiration that you have. It's not easy to tap into that, right? Because we're so taught to kind of do things in such a structured way, right? You go to school, you graduate school, and you go to college or university, and then once you have all these degrees, and it's now, I want to say that we're talking about how expensive education is just generally, right? Yes. And how you need to be more strategic about it. But back then it was, that was the path. So yeah, I was considered a rebel in that.
I mean, it worked for you.
Thankfully. But some of the characteristics that we spoke about earlier is why it worked, right? Mm-hmm. Because of that fearlessness, you do have to have resilience and fortitude and just the audacity to kind of forge forward, especially that young, 18, and saying, yeah, I'm here, I showed up, and now this is my career, so yeah.
What was it like working in IT compared to I guess what IT people go through now? I know technology has vastly changed, but for some reason I feel like there's some similarities, at least in interacting with people regarding technology there.
I want to say that there are similarities in, let's say, back then, the 90s, the early 2000s, compared to today, in that our stories are very similar, in that you end up being the one of. So that might be you're the only person of color, you're the only woman, or you're the only, African American in a space, in a conference.
Wow.
There were conferences where literally I was the only Black woman in the space. Wow. An IT conference, you wouldn't think that, where there are literally hundreds of people in the industry. And then that also varied depending on the subject matter that you were an expert in. So I would say that it's a lot better, and I can't tell you how overjoyed it makes me feel to see that the representation has increased and is continuing to increase. We still have a lot of work to do, right? Yes. We definitely do. That's without saying, but it's great to see finally some progression there. So I would say that that's a huge similarity. And I want to say the self-taught component is huge now, where back then that was unheard of, in that it was expected that you went to college, you went to university, you went and got, pages and pages of certification, whereas I entered in on the foundation of having skill, but also I feel like God-given talent to be able to look at technology, identify where there might be gaps in that technology or in a process, and then solutionize what that might look like. And I was able to carry that for over 30 years now into tech.
That is so beautiful. Those critical thinking skills that you gain from learning how to do things on your own.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Because a lot of people struggle with that nowadays, especially because, education itself is a struggle, especially with COVID having happened. It really put a dampen on a lot of people's educational skills.
Yes.
So we really need to work on the critical thinking part. But you already had that well established because of all of the interests you had while you were in high school.
Yes.
That's really good.
Yes. And then what got honed at home, but also taking a lot of initiative in whatever subject matter that I was interested in, and watching industry trends and seeing what the future. What did it look like 3 to 5 years out? What did it look 10 years out? And identifying what skills were necessary to thrive in those spaces for that time, right? Or into the future. And I feel like we're in such a digital age where we have access to this information. So YouTube University is real. Yes. So you can become proficient in a number of techie or IT specific professions by, really honing in on initiative and just the drive and determination and inquisitiveness to learn a subject.
So the YouTube University thing is real, because I remember, let's see, was I back in undergrad? I looked up a video because my laptop screen had a crack in it.
Of course it did.
And so I was like, well, I don't want to take it to get fixed because I don't have money. I'm an undergrad student. But also I was in an REU program at that time. And so I literally looked up a video about how to fix the laptop screen and just ordered the parts and did it myself. And I felt so empowered by doing that. And so I just love that you can learn all these skills just from watching how other people have learned how to do things. And especially I love seeing people put things together. I grew up watching how it's made.
I love that.
But yeah, no, you put the nail on the head that there's so much information out there, and you could just learn whatever you want. You don't necessarily have to go to school, because there's so many people have gone to school or have not gone to school and have put information out there for people to learn.
Yes, and then it's not accessible to everyone as well. I'm just thinking about, it's 5 of us. I would imagine, so I remember my parents saying, if we pay for your college, we run your life. You'll be a young adult with a curfew kind of thing. But jokes aside, there's some, they couldn't put all of us, through college, and that's the story, the reality for many families today, right? So I think it's actually great that we are in a digital age where, like you said, you can really learn any topic. Now that isn't to say that at some point you need some kind of formal training depending on the subject matter, right? Or you need that opportunity in place to be able to have a hands-on experience. But I think that it really is wonderful that we have reached a point where there's so much, it's good and bad, but so much data that exists and so much information that's out in the world that you're able to really, hone in on those skills on your own if you wanted to.
And in saying that, have you ever faced any difficulties or just, opposition by people who've looked down on you because you don't have that shiny degree?
That is a very great question. That is the first time I've been asked that.
Oh, really?
Yes, that is the first, but that is such a great question because yes, the short answer is yes. Many, especially coming in as a consultant. So if you when I think of the 30 years that I've been in tech, the landscape, we could split it in half. So 15 of the years I was an IT contractor. So that means that Fortune 500, 100 companies would hire me to come in and be a part of the team or a subject matter expert for a specific tech. Oftentimes in those environments, especially starting out in my career, it was ageism. Also the fact, what we look like, that played a part, and even gender, the fact that, I was a woman in this field and was at a level that was competitive. And so very much a lot of, stereotypical type of interactions or what we call now microaggressions. We didn't have these terms, but I kind of feel like I could have owned a couple of companies had I gone the HR route with the types of scenarios that I endured. And not just me, but I think about my fellow professionals in the space that look like us that came up in the industry as well. But yeah, a lot of microaggressions, a lot of, I'll just be blunt, a lot of disrespect, simply because of how I looked. Nothing to do with the fact that I was bringing, by that time, years of hands-on experience. And to kind of take you back to bring you forward, because of my interest and intrigued and exactly how you said, how curious you were about taking things apart and how they were built, that curiosity led to building enterprise level servers for companies. Wow. And so at that time, being able to have that skill so young, it was a threat, and because of that threat, people reacted to it. So I would say that hasn't changed. Unfortunately, unfortunately, that hasn't changed. However, I feel like there are so many ways for us to sort of better address those type of situations. And I don't think that it's, only in tech. It's across any industry where representation needs to be increased.
Yes, 100%. During that time, did you have anyone who was basically on your side, in your corner, that saw how powerful you were and were like, hey, stop that? She knows what she's doing. Like, anybody who's there advocating for you, or you only had to advocate for yourself? It
was a little bit of both. I feel like in current time, in more recent times, I feel like, and I love this generation because I feel like this generation is not having it. I feel like you all really speak up, whereas it was, again, like this very structured process. Like if you felt, if you had any type of situation that was uncomfortable, you had to go to your supervisor, and then your supervisor had to decide whether it was worth taking to HR. Like, it was just this very stoic and very impersonal type of process if you ever had to engage in uncomfortable or any type of conflict during your profession. Whereas I feel like now, you all really speak up for yourselves. So as far as advocates, that started to happen later in the career, as far as folks really focused on what I was bringing to the table. But I want to say I started to build my own table. I got to a point where I realized I didn't have to deal with the microaggressions. I didn't have to deal with any of the biases that I was faced with. That the other way to solutionize, if you would, I identified the gaps, right? Like, I always end up coming back to tech, right? In that using certain critical thinking skills to identify, all right, this is happening way too often, and it can affect. I don't think people realize when you're constantly engaged in that type of behavior, it does eventually and over time affect your work, affect your mental space, right? Yeah. So when I saw that it was becoming maybe an issue, is where I realized, okay, there's a better way to do that, and the way to do that. Yes, I bring all these skill sets to the table, but I'm going to start building my own.
I love that. That's beautiful. And it really does hurt when you have to do that, though, because you don't want, like, you're already proving yourself over and over and over again in these spaces, especially because, like, especially in your example, you didn't have that degree that everyone was looking towards and like, oh, never mind. Like, you have to keep showing them that you are powerful, you know what you're doing. And the fact that you have to make your own table so that people would finally just stop.
Yes, and it's a challenge, but we could do hard things.
Yeah, that's true.
We could do hard things, and the advocacy also comes in results, and it's really important. Whether you're self-taught or you go through formal education, that you are able to showcase that you're a subject matter expert in the space that you want to dominate, that you want to enter into. So I feel like once, history and performance, past performance, is where, that I want to say that became more of the shining light, so to speak. And the microaggressions and the biases happened less and less. I think. But to your point about how it can affect your confidence, essentially, where I regained, I want to say, that power back is, legend has it, that I beat out 11 candidates for a position at a very prominent company. And so to me, yeah, from my understanding, the reason why, and this is why I say legend has it, is because like that was the rumor that I had heard years later. And these 11 candidates had PhDs, certifications, but what they didn't have was, by that time, 10 years of hands-on experience working for some of the top companies in the country, right? Yeah.
You gotta snap to that. Like,
Thank you.
Come on.
Thank you so much.
11 candidates with all these shiny degrees and like distinguished backgrounds.
Yes.
And it's like, cannot beat real hands-on, real world experience.
And that's important.
That's very important.
Yes.
So, fashion. I heard through the grapevine that you had a bit of a fashion career.
Oh.
So, you care to explain?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. So, as we spoke about, fashion was, and just creativity and drawing was a first love, illustration, painting, those kind of things, but really took to fashion. This is actually pretty hilarious. I'm not sure I've ever shared this. So in high school, as a form of expression, so I didn't dress the way everyone dressed, as you can probably tell. And so I used to take cereal boxes once they were empty. So once they were empty, I would take the cereal box, cut it in half. And my mom, by the way, as a prefix, she was a seamstress as well. So I watched her, build something from the ground up, right? Wow. Through fabric, right? So she would make clothes. So seeing that was also fascinating. So I was inspired by that. So I would take like Captain Crunch boxes and cut them in half, then staple them, and then use her extra fabric and wrap the cereal boxes in fabric, and then
make a bag?
To make hats, like Queen Latifah used to wear during her career. So I used to love Queen Latifah. So when I saw like how regal she looked in her hats, I used to create them out of cereal boxes. And
but that's impressive, though. That's amazing. I feel like we're gonna have to put a picture of Queen Latifah in the hat,
yes,
like so people get like an idea of what you were working with.
Yes, and what I'll probably do, you know what, I haven't did it in years. I will probably do a quick video of showing like how I used to do it. So just cereal boxes, leftover fabric from my mom's making clothes, and a stapler. That is. And Vogue. And I had my Queen Latifah hats. So it started there as far as like that creative side or the fashion side. And then my dad, I have no idea. Sometimes we just don't know how our parents made things happen, even when you live modestly. My dad somehow got me a grant at the Fashion Institute. Wow. Yes, in New York. And so while I was in high school, for a time, I went to FIT for fashion illustration. So yeah, I got to really, learn the formal way. Interestingly enough, comparatively, you would think I would do the formal training in technology, but I did it in fashion. While in high school, was doing fashion illustration and merchandising, and really got to learn, right, the behind the scenes of the fashion industry. But then, while I was sort of nurturing my tech career, I was also still very much, and fashion for me is a form of armor. And so
I can see.
Yes, it's a form of armor, but also a form of expression. So always fashionable, but then decided, you know what, I could probably do some things, because I would always get asked out in public, colleagues, where did you get your outfit from? Or how did you put something together, right? And so once I realized that that's actually a career as a personal stylist or a fashion stylist, that's when I went into the industry. So yes, I am a former published fashion stylist and personal stylist, and one of the largest clients that I had was the NFL.
That is crazy.
Yes.
You did everything.
Oh, not yet. I'm working on it. Working on it. I call it a life list. You know, sometimes you hear bucket list. I call it a life list. Like how much, you know, whatever I've been dreaming up and or have aspirations for in, you know, how can I move it forward?
I love that so much. So now that we've learned about your IT career and your fashion career, how did that all come together to create Dope Nerds?
Oh man, I love this question. Okay, so I have to share this story from the top, and that is, remember I was speaking about really deciding what it looks like to create my own table, and really the catalyst and one of the pillars of Dope Nerds is because I really wanted to increase representation. I really wanted to be a part of a pipeline that would usher in the next generation of nerds and the next generation of unicorns. And so while at the Federal Reserve, which is, remember I said split my career in half? Mm-hmm. So 15 was as a IT contractor, and then I was an IT contractor for the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
And I don't know that, and as a sidebar, I don't know that aspiring techies even realize that you can have a career at the Central Bank of the United States. And so I was an IT contractor, and then I went full-time with the Federal Reserve. And while there, I was a subject matter expert for a specific technology. And the idea of Dope Nerds literally happened like a hologram. And I really feel as though, and I'll describe what that looks like. And I really feel as though it was divine in that very demanding career at the Federal Reserve. At that time, I had no plans on, I hadn't structured a way to exit. It was, I just had this really thriving and demanding career. And then in 2019, I was sitting at, and us techies, we love sitting in a coffee shop and we love a good cafe, right? And so I was sitting, and so while having this career, I also was doing fashion styling as well. So I had personal clients that I would style for. So I was sitting in a cafe, kind of doing outfit of the day, things of that nature. And it was in a glass enclosed type of shop. And literally I was looking out and the name of the company came up. At the time I was really focused on opening a physical, almost like a Dope Nerds Academy. Wow. So that building and what it looked like, and I have the picture because I had my phone on a timer to do outfit of the day. Mm-hmm. And when this hologram, is how I could best describe it, came across my purview, the camera caught me saying, because I couldn't believe it. I said, that's it. Because throughout the years I had been thinking about, man, how can I be a part of that pipeline? How can I be part of the journey that is solving a problem, right? And that problem is representation in STEM. And so there is an image that I have where I'm in this shock state because literally that's when Dope Nerds, how I came up with it. And I grabbed a piece of tissue and just started
jotting down
everything that I saw in that vision in real time. And the dope part is, in our culture, hip hop, we're always saying things are dope, like, oh, that's dope, right? It's a positive, it's a positive narrative, and it's an adjective, right? Yeah. And then nerds, I really wanted to, speaking about representation, I really wanted to completely shift this narrative that a nerd looked a specific way. Mm-hmm. And folks can be nerds in their own right, but I really wanted to showcase that people of color, that women are nerds, and that we're fly, and that we're dope, and so that's how the two and that we're brilliant, right? All of these positive things. And I also wanted to shift the narrative especially at that time. Being a nerd was not cool.
Yes.
Right? We all went to at least elementary and middle school and high school, and we know that nerds used to get bullied so much. And so it wasn't a cool thing to be,
seen as smart.
Seen as smart, right? Or that you were into your books, or that you were into arts and culture and history, right? So I totally wanted to shift that you could be fly, that you could be dope, and you could be brilliant, and you could be a nerd. And that's how Dope Nerds came about.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I love that so much. So what were the challenges in trying to start your own business, right? Because you are the founder. So what challenges did you face?
I always take a deep sigh at that one. I don't even have to try to pull up the statistics of being a woman, a Black woman founder, or a person of color founder in the tech space, and the fact that we don't even, I think the stats over the last couple of years, not even 1% of VC funding. So I already knew coming into it that I was not going to try and do the raising, trying to raise funds route, as many tech founders do. They tend to go the VC route. And I don't know, call it rebellion, but I just felt like there was another way. I also came across, and this gentleman mistakenly became a mentor, who is a VC, and he.
Sorry, what does VC stand for? Just people who aren't familiar.
Sure, venture capitalist.
Okay.
And so I remember him saying that when we were doing a competitive analysis around the VR space and just mixed reality and extended reality space and immersive learning. And we came across one of the competitors, and I'll never forget him saying, if they built their company from 0 to 53 million, then why not you?
Wow.
And then this is a person who, right, they're out there looking for the unicorn companies to invest in. So for him to give me that sort of tidbit and inspiration, I want to say, and also just
challenge.
And just advice, I knew I was on the right path. So one of the challenges obviously is funding. Luckily, I did semi-right by my money, and when I was full-time in tech, and so I tapped into my 401k, and I built Dope Nerds off of the back of my 401k.
You invested in yourself.
I invested in myself.
Wow.
And built the table, right?
Wow. Yep.
And
Black women.
the resilience, right? And I feel as though, why not us as founders? Only because we know how to make something from nothing, right? And putting nothing around air quotes. And so
we built this nation, so you could build a company.
You could build a company, right? And you could do it your way, and you can increase the representation, and you could be a part of the pipeline that shows the tapestry, right? Of not only our culture, but just what the world really looks like, and what it should look like at the C-suite level, what it should look like at any of the STEM-related fields, right? And so I would say that is by far not only my challenge, I'm sure many challenges, I'm sure the challenge for many founders that are starting, especially tech company. And then, of course, I decided to go into one of the most expensive areas of tech, even though it's leading edge and there's still so much innovation in the space. It's still expensive for all intents purposes. However, we could do hard things.
Yes, that we can. So, where is your company, Dope Nerds, located? Like, where are you headquartered?
Yes, we are headquartered downtown Baltimore, right? Yes.
Not too far away.
Yes,
Just around the corner.
just around the corner, and I love that. And although we're headquartered in Baltimore because we see an amazing opportunity there, we are a 100% portable company. And what that means is that we could facilitate virtual reality and mixed reality anywhere in the country. And we have no reliance on a venue's resources to do that. So you get a high quality, immersive learning, immersive training experience without having to worry about a connection dropping or the quality of the graphics being compromised.
And why specifically Baltimore, downtown Baltimore, for your headquarters?
I love that. I think initially my tech career had moved me, I was traveling all over the country for my tech career. And so, but more up and down what's considered the Amtrak corridor, right? Right. So between New York, Delaware, Philly, DC, and because of that frequency, I was really thinking about, okay, where's a place where we can really make an impact, and I also thought about which city is on a cusp of a renaissance. And I truly believe that Baltimore is that city. And so after tons of research is where I knew that I wanted to be in the DC area. But then after, really realizing or really determining that the type of impact that I want Dope Nerds to make, at least at the start, is how I selected Baltimore, downtown Baltimore, as the city to really launch and hit the ground running. However, we have clients literally as far as Cincinnati and Houston, where we facilitate our VR immersive learning and education and training.
So cool. So as the CEO and founder of Dope Nerds, what does your average workday look like?
So even though those are just titles, because when you are a founder I want to say of any company, but I'll speak to the tech side of it. When you're a tech founder, you are wearing a plethora of hats. So everything from administrative to accounting, especially when you have a small team or no team. I mean, it started no team. I'm just this summer through programs like YouthWorks and other city-based programs that want to usher in the next generation of the workforce, will have a small team. But for we're in our fourth year, so for the first three.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was just you?
It was solo. It was solopreneur, right? And then I would be able to hire subcontractors, right? There were ways that I could hire subcontractors, hire family to come in and help with facilitating the VR experiences, et cetera. But you're wearing a ton of different hats. So in a normal day, it's administrative, it's accounting, making sure the numbers are numbering, right? But then you also, it's hard to get to the fun stuff, if you would, and that would be around the innovation, right? Allowing yourself to sit in a space so that you could start innovating the technology or the subject matter expertise that you're in. So time management is extremely important, so that you are able to not only wear these different hats from a C-suite perspective, but that you're also able to stay on top of industry trends, that you're also not crystal ball, but semi-predict where the industry might be going so that you can improve your products and services around that. To also, I find myself continuously tapping into why I started Dope Nerds, because it's very, very easy, especially with financial challenges, not having, all the necessary funding to build a thriving company to grow and scale it. You can fall into, wanting to be all things to all people. So it's really important I found, to really set some time aside to to tap into why always tap back into your why and the purpose and your purpose, right? Not just your company's purpose, but what's that burn?
Yeah, you're feeling the inner flame. Yeah.
What's that? And I love how you said that. What's that inner flame inside of you? Because that's what's going to keep you going. Doesn't matter whether you're a multi-million-dollar company or you're just starting out. That inner flame that you have, that when things get really, really hard, because they are, because they are.
Life is not easy.
Life be lifing. As a fellow entrepreneur and friend of mine says, life be lifing,
Yes.
right? And that's not going to stop, right? So time management and really setting aside time for each of these different hats, and then being able to always get back to sort of, whether that's meditation or going for a walk, as a tech head and as a STEM head, we love to be in front of our devices, right? So it's easy, it's easy for us to geek out and not go get fresh air. It's easy for us to geek out and not be in social spaces. So I think as part of that day, I've been really intentional. I want to say more. I wasn't for a really long time. I'm more intentional about saving space for that inner flame.
I love that. Having that balance, that work-life balance.
It's really important. And for a time, I'm going to be honest, there's no such thing. For a time.
I mean, you were solo for a few years, so it makes sense.
Yeah. And so, for a time that there isn't, and there are going to be pockets where that balance is going to be way off, and you have to be okay with that. And always, and again,
And learn how to recenter yourself.
Yes, and I love how you phrase that inner flame. You're always going to have to, honestly, tap into that, just as almost like a pulse check to your point, and getting to a space of balance in some way.
So what are some of the training programs that your company offers?
Oh man. So not only am I the founder and CEO of Dope Nerds, I'm also the CTO for a government contracting AI platform that I co-founded and actually developing with a partner. So I have
many hats, literally
many hats. But because of the work that I've been doing with Dope Nerds, I was approached to help build a artificial intelligence platform that would help starting at startup to small businesses to enterprises navigate the government contracting space. Yes.
Power to you.
right. And that reaction is real because, and how I describe it, it is the Marine Corps and British Special Forces of paperwork and processing.
That's
right?
what I was thinking about.
Yes, from all facets of it, right? So my partner and I have found I'm going through the pain points of having Dope Nerds, getting Dope Nerds in line for government contracting so that we can be in schools at the district level. We don't play it small. So you'll often hear me say whenever Dope Nerds is referenced and it's Dope Nerds as a small business, I gently correct people as a growing business because we don't do small over here.
Exactly, no. We have bigger sites.
Yes, we have bigger sites. And it's nothing wrong with the phrase. I just think for me, personally, it's that pulse check, right?
Yeah.
That I am doing, not to play it small and to think bigger. Because if you're reaching for the galaxy, you're gonna get the stars, right? And so some of the training, this kind of falls in line with the training. On the soft skills side, it's everything from how to handle conflict resolution, which we spoke about earlier. Yes. Really wish we had that in the early 2000s, and so conflict resolution, leadership development, even though DEI is under attack, is still a very much necessary skill set to learn. So DEI training, and these are all true to life scenario based. So when you get into a Dope Nerds VR headset, you are presented with real life, real situations, real environments, and then you're able to go through a series of modules around that subject. On the trade skills side, yes, we talk about STEM, but trade skills are also, they also need representation as well. So construction, manufacturing, even manufacturing in healthcare as well. Again, real life scenarios. So you have a completely redesigned construction site with skyscrapers. Wow. Yes. So imagine Empire State getting state building, or even the African American Museum building getting in its development stage. And I want you to try to think of that in an immersive VR, virtual reality experience, where as a learner that wants to be a part of the construction industry, you're literally building the structure. You're learning how to have your harness and your protection gear on, and then the experience is actually following you and following your learning journey. And then you have a dashboard that will identify your areas of improvement, where you're excelling, and then dynamically showing you, okay, you need to you should redo these modules, or you can progress to the next stage. Yes, and all of these type of trainings are fantastic for an employer, because you know in real time when you can put someone out in the field, or when you can have a healthcare worker have difficult conversations because they have that bedside manner now. So those are some of the trainings, and we start at middle school. So wow. Yeah, so at age 11 going up to 18, and then that 18 to 24, as well as already in the industry professionals.
That is so cool. So how long do these training programs last? Like, how long does it take to get through some of them? I guess it depends on the subject matter.
It does. So for job readiness, let's say, or employability, where you learn how to successfully interview. We all know how to have, well, most of us, right, that have already had jobs, have careers. We've gone through the interview process, and we know what it takes to have a successful interview, right? But for those ushering into that are new to the workforce, being able to have them go through a scenario where they're being interviewed and ask questions like, is it ever okay to lie during an interview? Some may not, right, some may not know that. Right. So these immersive trainings, it really, and the modules, like you mentioned, it really depends on the subject matter and how many modules are in that subject matter that determines. So it can take anywhere from, a module can be anywhere from 20 minutes or to 30. The other thing too, best practices. You don't want anyone, just like you shouldn't be in front of a TV too long, or in front of your gaming console or monitor too long. Same best practice for VR. You don't want to be inside of an actual virtual reality experience too long, or have the goggles on or the headset on too long. So those breaks are necessary. So we don't really go over the 30-minute mark.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, because you don't want to confuse reality for the virtual reality.
Yes. Yes.
So all this talk about virtual reality, I'm ready to put my headset on. So let's get started with the VR showcase. Whoa, this is so cool. So right now, I am currently in my avatar state. I am dressed up as Ursula, as if she would be here. And as you can see, Ursula's on the screen over here. But let's check out this workspace real quick before we continue the interview. So this is one of the workspaces that you can hold your meetings in. And you should be able to see it from my point of view. So we can see the museum picture over there. And then that's one of the exhibit pictures for our exhibit Afrofuturism. And there's another picture of it over there. Oop, my arm decided it wanted to be in front of my face. But yeah, and then over here is like a board that you can use. This is so cool. So as part of the VR showcase, Ursula, can you explain like what is AR, VR, XR? Like what's the difference between these three types of
virtual realities and what are some misconceptions that people have about them?
Yeah, so I'm sure folks like hear all of these different, like tech jargons and are just like, okay, they all sound the same. But they actually have distinctive differences. So I want you to think of XR as the full umbrella. Or what's considered extended reality. And it's really a generic term for the technologies that allow us to digitally create things, right, that don't exist. Putting that in air quotes because it's really, I'm going to use the word realism a lot and the word really a lot. So it is technically in the real world. We're still in, right? We're still on planet Earth, right? But they're just digital objects, and that, and it's a combination of what those objects are physically. So I'll hold up my mobile device, right, in the real world, and how we experience them in a digital world. So that's XR. It's like the super umbrella of all things um, immersive, let's say. Then we'll start with augmented reality or AR. So AR is literally an overlay of digital information on real spaces. So give you an example. Um, we could create, we could recreate like some of the exhibit objects here at the museum and have an app where the visitors are able to load up the museum app and then have those physical, what essentially is a digital form of the physical objects inside the museum. Does that make sense? So a lot of times you might, and these experiences have existed for many years, and that is you could download an app and you'll be able to put like a cup and sit it and like move your mobile device so that it's sitting on your desk. Or you see a lot of furniture companies now, at least the mid-tier to high-end furniture stores now, allowing you to put the sofa in your open space, right, so that you can
Mm-hmm.
see how it looks. That is the form of AR. It is really augmenting, right, the actual physical space so that you gain a new insight using digital assets.
Oh,
Then,
okay.
does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's kind of like, as you said, with those like glasses companies where you could like just like put your face in the video and it'll put like the glasses under your face to see how the glasses look, kind of like a virtual
Yes.
try on. Okay.
Yes, that is a great example. That's another great example too. And then any of like, to your point, any of like the try-on type of applications that consumers may have encountered. And then that brings us to virtual reality. And virtual reality is taking those digital assets or taking a virtual space, which you're in now, right? And creating experiences in those virtual spaces. So it's spaces that allow us to be fully immersed in an environment or in a scenario similar to what we're duplicating today.
This is so cool. So speaking of environments, which of these environments is your favorite? And could we like go through a couple of them so we could change the room a little bit? Would that mess things up in our meeting?
Yeah, so right now we are, this is a form of spatial computing in that we are in a virtual space and we are collaborating with each other using, let's again putting quotes around the real world because we're still in the real world, right? We're not
Yes.
in some other dimension, but we're just in a digital, you're in a digital space and I'm in a physical space. And so what that enables us to do is I'm connecting to you in your virtual avatar version of yourself through Zoom. And so and I can still experience the immersiveness because you'll get to change the environment. So one of the environments that's a favorite is definitely the city slicker, I think, room.
Yeah, City Sleek. Let's see. So here we're customizing room. And we have these different options here. So right now we have City Sleek set up. That's what
Okay,
you can
so
see
we are in
here.
City Speak right now, right?
Yes, the City
Okay.
Sleek right now.
And
Let's
from
see.
my point of view, via the Zoom, I can see I can see your like your whole desk setup. I see that we're sharing a Word document, and then I see the custom images from the Afrofuturism exhibit on the wall too. So it's just
Oh,
so it feels like I'm there in the virtual world with you.
you're experiencing it with me, just a little differently from your perspective. Let's
Yes,
pick a different one. Let's pick the beach villa and
we can
see.
all use a beach.
Yes, let's go to the beach, everybody. Let's see what this looks like. Now, see, this is so cool. And again, you see the images have moved around. So there's the one of the Afrofuturism pictures there. And then we can see the ocean water there and like this island, or the island over there is kind of very Mediterranean. This is so cool. And our board has changed over here. And there's a
And what's
museum
so
there.
cool from my side is I see you moving around in your seat. So that's why it's so fascinating, right? Because you are physically in a room at a desk in a chair, right?
Hmm.
But your physical self version of yourself is an avatar, and we can actually see you moving around in your seat, and we can see you moving your hands. So that's why it's still realism, right? Because it in realistic because we are still in this dimension.
Yes. This is just so cool. So, how many people can be connected to the same environment?
It really depends on the virtual reality experience. So when as we kind of broke down the different types of XR, right, or just immersive technologies, if you are when you're doing augmented reality, that can be hundreds or even thousands of people, right? Because it's based on individual devices. However, in this environment, in this app, I think we could fit up to 100 people joined via Zoom. But then I think within the virtual space, it depends on your desk setup. And I think
Mm.
yeah, so I think for this particular desk, right? So three other avatars can fit at this desk. But then if
Hmm.
you were to change it to like a conference room, then maybe like 10 people can fit in that particular environment. So it just depends on the not only the virtual reality content or the application, but also the settings.
Okay. This is so cool. So, how does immersive learning improve, for instance, in the educational space, right? So, let's say that I wanted to meet with like a group of mentees, like a students that I'm working with on a project or something. How would this immersive experience better their understanding or like improve upon existing educational methods?
That's a great question. So this isn't a dope nerds thing. This is just literally science, and that is that we retain. I'm trying to get a good angle for the video. Hold on, maybe it's maybe it's this angle. Nope. And there's glare, but let's see if we could get it without the dot. Okay, so it really depends. It really depends on the type of immersive experience, but just scientifically, we can retain up to 90% more of what of an experience that or a learning experience or training experience that we're immersed in versus traditional methods. So as you can imagine, with a statistic like that, how much more knowledge, how much more education a student or a learner would be able to absorb if they were fully immersed in that content.
Okay. So it's kind of like what people say when to like learn a language, for instance, you have to like it's better to just go to the country that speaks that language and literally immerse yourself in that environment. So it's a little bit similar to that.
I would say so. It's a non-traditional way, right? So and that can be relative, right? But let's traditionally we're taught, pen and paper, right? Textbook. That is how we learn, right? You read chapters of a textbook,
and then you essentially ask questions about that content, and then or you take a quiz and a test, and that's supposed to measure how much you've learned. But how many exams have you taken around a subject matter, and have no idea? Like, if it were to be brought up today, you more than likely, like, from an exam or knowledge that maybe you've acquired on a specific topic in middle school, it's more than likely you don't remember like the textbook version of that, right? Of that
Mm-hmm.
response answer. Whereas when you're fully immersed in something, there, and I don't want to come off as if I'm some kind of neuro like brain surgeon, but it taps into a part of our brain that helps us to retain that information more. There's something about the fact that it's uninterrupted, right? Because you have
Mm-hmm.
the goggles on, and so because you have on the goggles, you're not, and then you have controllers too, so you're not doodling, right? Or you're not saying, oh, let me go click off, into this other space. You're concentrated and focused on a specific subject matter. And so that is why, and it's something about how you're engaging with that content that allows it to really stick with you.
Okay. Wow. This really feels like the future. So, and speaking of the future, do you envision AR, XR, well, I guess all of it falls under XR,
Yes.
um, taking over the classroom or just simply being used as a supplement to existing educational methods?
I believe that at some point, a version of immersive learning will be the new way of learning,
Mm,
and will be in the classrooms as the dominant way to absorb that education, absorb that knowledge. Um, I do see that wearables in the way, or the way that we engage with immersive learning today through VR headsets, I think that's going to drastically change over the years. I'm going to give it, and I might be optimistic, but I'm going to give it 10 years. I think in 10 years, that wearable will be different. So maybe it's something on your wrist. Maybe it's some really cool glasses that you all have been seeing me wear, and and then it's projecting, that knowledge off of a digital screen that we can then learn from. But it will be different, and the way in which we know education to be facilitated today, I do honestly believe that it will completely change in the next 5 to 10 years. And in two ways, I think it'll be a phased approach, in that, yes, it will supplement traditional educational methods, and then transition into a fully immersive way of learning.
wow, that would be so cool to be a student again in 10 years
Yeah,
and experience this form of learning. Oh, it will change my life forever. Well,
yes,
as much as I am enjoying being at the beach and being in this virtual reality, I think it's time to get back to reality, unfortunately. But this was super cool to learn more about VR in this space and to see the future of what VR would be like in the classroom. Okay.
yes. Thank you so much, Belinda, for having me. This is fantastic. It's so awesome to be a part of the museum's virtual conference room.
Yes. So I guess we'll jump back into the in-person interview.
Wow. It feels weird being back in this reality. Of
It's cool,
everything.
right?
Yes, it was so cool. Oh my goodness, seeing all of the different worlds that it could be in at just the touch of a button. Oh, it was amazing. Okay, so I have a few more questions for you before we close out. So back to your life outside of your career, because you told us everything about your career in Dope Nerds and everything. So you mentioned your parents are basically your role models while growing up, and they've instilled with you a lot of the things that you carry with you today that make you a successful entrepreneur you are today. But do you have any new role models now, or are your parents still your role models?
My parents will forever be, because of the foundation that they've laid. Growing up, I didn't know about an Ursula Byrne, or I didn't know about Robert Smith, right? So they have become sort of like my, all right, holy grail of what a career in the C-suite would look like, but also just building from the foundation up a successful business. And so, yeah, that's sort of the breadth of my inspiration, but also the aspiring techies and the aspiring, the new generation of nerds and the new generation of the workforce that's being ushered in. I'm really inspired by you all, and I'm really inspired by this generation's tenacity, but also I'm really, really inspired by and we spoke about this earlier, just the audacity that you all have. And I love that you all, that work-life balance that you spoke about, that you have a different perspective on what it means to have a job. And that it doesn't mean that you're at that place forever. And it doesn't mean that you're at that particular employer until you retire. What I love about this generation is it is about experiences. You got 2 years. that's the time frame I've heard from millennials, and what's the next generation?
Gen Z.
Gen Z. From the Gen Zers is that you got 2 years, and in that 2 years, what I've noticed is you want a vast amount of different experiences that range just living life, right?
Yeah.
But enjoying the work too. So that's a lot of where, and I'm inspired by innovation. I'm inspired by ideas that come out of nowhere. I'm inspired by messaging that I might receive through meditation or just being still for a moment, and I'm just looking forward to how this all pulls together for Dope Nerds, but also as part of my purpose.
It's so beautiful. So you mentioned all the hobbies you partook in when you were a child.
Yes.
So do you partake in similar hobbies now, or do you have new hobbies that you're trying out?
I have new hobbies.
Ooh, okay.
Fashion will always be a thing, but that gets done daily. So I kind of feel like I operate in that passion and that love for creativity every day. But one of my newest hobbies is go-karting.
Go-karting?
Yes.
Whoa.
So if you're downtown Baltimore and you see someone in a transformer go-kart, that's yours truly. So right along all around both, Harbor has multiple sides. So you have Harbor East, Harbor West, and there is a pathway, almost like a bike path. So just when I need, like you said, those moments to refuel and to tap back.
To recenter yourself.
Yes, to recenter, to tap it back into that fire, to or maybe just a woosah moment, right? Just to kind of take a break. Yeah, I go kart around the harbor, and there's something so freeing about that, but also it reignites the imagination because you're surrounded by water, right? Which is an untapped, right? It's still or still a very exploratory kind of nature that we're still looking into and that we are still learning about. So just being around the water, being on the harbor. And then the city element, right? The grit and the grind of it all, just all of that together. While go-karting, it's kind of hard to describe the freedom that I feel in doing that, and the enjoyment that I get from that. And then I'm ready to rock. Then it's like I could do like an hour of that, and then it's like, all right, now I'm ready to take on the world again. So yeah, that's the new hobby. You got to come out. You got to come and go-kart with me.
I got to. But how did you get into go-karting?
I was I'm probably like the #1 Transformer fan. Like, it's not even embarrassing. It's just
Who's your favorite Transformer?
That's hard to say because there were some Transformers I wasn't even aware of. Like, I wasn't aware of, I don't recall Saturday morning cartoon watching the Transformers that are animals. So I'm new. So like, what is his name? It's Optimus Primal. So he's the ape. He's the ape version of Optimus Prime.
Okay.
And then there are like all these other animal Autobots, so to speak, that's on the Autobot side, right? And then there is similarities to the Decepticon side. Yes. So there are like these pockets of Transformers that I didn't know about and that I'm newly learning about. But speaking of which, there is another hobby. I am obsessed with collecting really cool Marvel figurines.
Ooh, that's expensive.
It can be, yes. So I've been keeping it at like, the under $20, a manageable number, especially while I'm building Dope Nerds. But yes, once I've decided in my head, like once Dope Nerds reaches a specific milestone, that I will, there's a Batman figurine that's made out of Swarovski crystals that it's the Batmobile and the actual figurine. So like, yeah, I'm
It's
obsessed.
gonna have to be in its own case, kind of like the Hope Diamond is. At the necklace.
Yes, exactly. Maybe on a turning table. Yes.
Slowly rotate.
Yes, it's a whole thing. So yeah, those are my two, like, kind of like, I'm gonna say mindfulness and mental wellness kind of spaces I like to be in as a hobby.
Those are beautiful hobbies to have, especially the go-karting one where you get to be a part of nature and still the tech is involved. That's so cool. I definitely have to join you sometime.
Yes, you do.
So unfortunately, we're coming to the end. Oh man, this conversation has been so much fun. But I have my final two questions for you. So the first one is, what does Black/African American representation in STEM mean to you?
It means that we don't have to feel this shadow pressure to go build our own table, because we are welcomed as part of C-suite, that we are welcomed as part of advanced teams at companies and across those industries, so that we could build, again, what the tapestry of the world looks like, right? Not just this small sector. So that's the core of what it means, and being able to usher in the generations. So each of us, where we see that void, reaching back to pull everyone forward. And we don't have to all wear the capes, right? We don't have to try to save everyone. The idea is to put your innovation out in the world so that they know that they can save themselves, that they know that it's that there's a brighter future than what they may be surrounded in, and that they can do hard things, and that they already have the resilience and the fortitude and the foundational characteristics to be great themselves.
And that actually leads into my final question. What advice do you have for members of our audience, particularly the middle schoolers and the high schoolers that'll be watching this interview, that want to follow a similar path as you?
One of the first things I would say is YouTube University. And really, I say that playfully to only mean to go out and explore that we are in, and I know people probably say this every year, we're in unprecedented times, but we really are, and that you have at literally your fingertips via your device, your mobile device, right? Your tablets, right? You don't even have to be in front of a computer or a laptop at this point. And go explore that, whatever that inner flame has been kind of tapping on you for an idea that you have, or if there is a subject that you want to learn, that you have literally everything that you need at your fingertips to move forward on the idea that you do not have to wait. You don't have to wait to be matriculated. You don't have to wait for a certification, that you can be part of meetups, right? You could find your tribe through like a meetup.com or through social media. You know, search for others that have similar interests and then start really cultivating those relationships so that you could start getting the hands-on experience, and whereby by the time you're ready to enter whatever space that you want to dominate, you would have already accumulated that experience as well as the soft skills.
Thank you, Ursula. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
This was
you.
an amazing conversation.
Thank
you to everyone who's listening, and thank you for watching through the window and into the mirror. Now, before we go, please remember, history is made by doing ordinary tasks extraordinarily well over long periods of time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. See you next time.